So what I'm trying to do is get the overall shape of the subject matter, and but try and draw it as loosely and as freely as possible. So I'm not looking for um, detail at the moment. I'm just basically trying to get the overall shape in. So as you can see, the line work is quite rough, but as we're going to sort of refine it and develop it. And the whole time we're looking for the biggest shapes. So we're not going to look at the detail. We're looking just at the overall shapes that we see as we draw. You want to try and sort of develop it organically. Let your eye and your hand work together, and spend more time looking at your subject than at your drawing surface. And at the whole time while we're busy drawing, we're busy correcting. So we're continuously trying to see more accurately what it is that we're busy drawing, and making adjustments as we go along. So we've established the basic outline, and we looked at the shapes, and obviously like we did in the previous exercises, we looked at the negative shape to establish the accuracy of the outline. But we're going to keep developing that and refining it as we go along. So what I'm going to do now is start looking at the internal shapes of the drawing, and the sort of the shapes that make up the various planes on the subject matter. So remember, the whole time that you're drawing, to look for different relationships, find how the different parts relate to each other, and how they're situated, how that affects what you're seeing. So while you're drawing, it's important to maintain a light and quite a delicate sort of touch, so you don't create any hard and dark marks on the paper, because you want to be able to erase and make corrections as you go. It's all about making those little adjustments that as your eye sees more accurately what you're drawing. So it's quite important to remember that when we're looking at our subject, to look at it in an abstract way. We're not sort of looking at what it is, but we're looking at the shapes and and the relationship of those different shapes. So the whole time I'm refining the drawing, and I'm starting now to look at the smaller sort of shapes, and but still keep looking at them as in an abstract sort of way, not the what am I drawing, but how I'm going to put it onto the paper. And this is where it's also important to draw lightly, so that we can make those little corrections that we need to as we're refining the drawing. So as I'm drawing this area here, I'm looking at how this forms a little diamond shape, and how these shapes intersect with that diamond shape. So once we're more or less happy with our contour line drawing, we can start looking at the accuracy of our drawing by focusing on the negative shapes. In this case, everything that's not the subject, the background and the surface that it's sitting on. So we're going to look at these shapes that are formed from the around the subject, and just try and sort of see that more accurately and see how the negative space actually juts into the positive shapes of the paper. So what I'm going to start doing now is start looking at introducing some values, some shadows. And like I said at the beginning, what I've done is drawn a little value scale on the side of the drawing, just of some of the possible values that we might see in the drawing. And this will just act as a guideline for us to develop the shadows. So it's quite important to keep the shadows as flat as possible. Try and see them as individual planes, because basically the subject is a series of planes and the shadows are going to be quite flat on them. So I'm going to look at this right hand side and the shadows that are formed under here and try and see that as one single shape. And I'm going to put it in quite flatly and quite evenly and try and keep it as one value. What we also want to do is try and think about the cast shadow. So you should remember that from our very first lessons. The cast shadow being the shadow that's formed where there's no direct light hitting any surfaces. And it's normally, in this instance here, it's the subject itself is creating a cast shadow, which is the areas underneath. And these are the darkest shadows in the drawing as well. So just like with all the other shadows, we want to see that as a shape. I'm going to look at this little shadow that's cast under here and just draw that across like that. So that'll be somewhere in this range of the values here. So it's going to be quite a dark value.